The ocean sat beyond the fence, steady and indifferent. Light flashed off the water in hard white shards. The training deck faced it anyway. Steel railings painted lines whined that tasted of salt and shipyard fuel. Mara Quinn stood at the head of a long table where a dozen medics waited with their hands flat, palms down, fingers spread. Nobody talked. They had learned what filled the space when she did not. The only sound that traveled with her was the soft, regular click of her left foot as she shifted her weight. Click, pause, click. Her prosthetic was matte black, scuffed at the heel. She wore plain navy scrubs with no patch and no stitched name. A strip of tape crossed her right knuckle. Her hair was twisted tight. Her eyes looked like they had already counted exits. She set a clear plastic cup on the metal table. Water, no ice. Condensation beaded immediately, then ran in thin trails down the sides. Mara lifted a tourniquet. "This is not a magic trick," she said. Her voice stayed low, steady, not unkind. "It is a tool. Your job is to use it early enough that it matters." A hand rose in the front row. The woman's hair was close-cropped, her nose sunburned, her gaze direct. "Ma'am," she said. "If it's a tool, why do people hesitate?" Mara let the wind fill the pause. "Because they want permission," she said. "They want somebody to tell them it's okay to hurt someone to save them." A few shoulders lowered, as if the answer gave them somewhere to set their fear. "You don't have time for permission," Mara added. "You have time for decisions." She snapped the tourniquet open and demonstrated on a rubber limb. Her hands did not rush. The motion was smooth, practiced, almost quiet. Tightened set lock, no wasted movement, no drama. "When it gets loud," she said, "your hands have to stay boring." She passed the tourniquet forward. "Name?" "Talia Reyes." "Your turn." Talia moved too fast on the first wrap and fumbled the lock. Her jaw clenched like force could fix it. Mara tapped the table once. Small sound, clean command. "Slow," she said. Talia reset. The second attempt held. She did not look up. "Better," Mara said. The cup had left a wet circle on the tabletop. A condensation ring, perfect and faint. Someone reached for a napkin. "Leave it," Mara said. The hand froze. "Patterns matter," Mara said, setting the tourniquet beside the ring. "In a bad room, your brain grabs anything familiar. Give it something simple, then do the work." She walked the line and corrected grips and posture. Click, click. The sound drew eyes, then sent them away again. One student glanced at her leg and flushed. Mara did not acknowledge it. She just adjusted his fingers until they stopped shaking. When the drill ended, the group stepped back and waited, uncertain what to do with the extra air. Mara rinsed her hands at the portable sink. The ring on the table had darkened into a thin halo that would dry and vanish if nobody touched it. Talia lingered after the others started down the stairs. She held her gear close to her chest like it could keep her steady. "You've done this a long time," Talia said. "Long enough," Mara replied. Talia hesitated. "My uncle was a corpsman. He told me about a woman who kept people alive in places nobody should survive. He said they called her Nightjar." The name sat between them, quiet and sharp. Mara's fingers tightened on the table edge, then relaxed. Her face stayed flat. Only her breathing changed. "That's a bird," Mara said. "He said she used to hum when it got bad," Talia pressed, "like she could tune the fear out." Mara reached for the cup and drank. Warm water, plastic taste. She set the cup down, in the same spot, directly over the ring, as if she wanted the circle to stay put. "People tell stories," Mara said. "They make the edges fit." "Does it bother you?" Talia asked. Mara looked at the halo. "Being a story," Talia nodded. Mara coiled the tourniquet with methodical fingers. "If you're lucky," she said, "you're a story that keeps somebody else alive." Talia absorbed that, grateful and unsatisfied at the same time. She nodded once and finally turned away. A woman approached from the side with a clipboard tucked under her arm. June Park Silver at the temple's posture, straight from a past that never fully left. Jeans, faded navy sweatshirt, cracked letters. "You done with them?" June asked. "They're done with me," Mara said. June's eyes went to the table. "You left a ring." Mara followed her look. The halo sat there, dark at the edges, clean in the center. "Let it dry," Mara said. June made a sound that might have been a laugh in another life. "You always got a reason?" Mara gathered her gear into a canvas bag and slung it over her shoulder. The strap brushed the place beneath her collarbone, where the fabric sat a little tighter than it should. She adjusted the collar without looking down. The students drifted away in pairs, talking quietly, trying on confidence, like a jacket that didn't quite fit. Their voices carried over the water and broke apart in the wind. Mara headed for the stairs. Click, click, June matched her pace. "You eating?" June asked. "I'll figure it out." June let that sit. Questions lived behind her teeth, but she knew which ones drew blood. At the bottom of the steps, the air changed. Less salt, more asphalt. The parking lot shimmered with heat. Fleet sedans sat in tidy lines, all the same dull gray, all anonymous. Mara stopped beside her car, and set the bag in the back seat. She rested her palm on the roof for a moment, feeling the metal warm under her skin. June leaned against the next car over. "You sure about staying?" she asked, voice casual, eyes not. Mara looked past the lot to the road that ran toward Norfolk, toward bridges and ship masts and neon signs that pretended they belonged to ordinary nights. "Staying is a job," Mara said. "And living?" Mara rolled the key between her fingers until the teeth pressed into her skin. She could have lied. She was practiced at it. Instead, she met June's eyes. "I'm working on it," she said. June nodded like she would accept that for now. "Drive safe." Mara slid into the driver's seat, adjusted her leg, and shut the door with a soft click. She sat still with both hands on the wheel and listened to distant gulls and the faint clank of rigging. Nothing urgent. Nothing wrong. She started the engine and left the radio off. The air smelled of warm metal and sea salt, and her hands stayed steady on the wheel, holding a line today. As she pulled out of the lot, she glanced once in the rearview mirror at the training deck. The cup still sat on the table, and the ring beneath it darkened as it dried in the sun. Mara kept the radio off as Norfolk slid past bridge lights and shipyard cranes, cutting the sky into hard shapes. Her hands stayed steady on the wheel until the hospital garage swallowed her in fluorescent light. Hot concrete, old rain, the faint sting of exhaust. Her left foot clicked once on the painted line, and the sound came back thin between pillars. Inside the emergency room, the air was bleach and sweat, and something metallic that never quite left. Curtains snapped on their tracks. Monitors chirped, then stopped, then chirped again. Mara clipped her badge on, washed her hands, and moved with the quiet speed of someone who had learned what seconds cost. A paramedic rolled in a patient with gray skin and a slack-jaw shirt cut open, chest rising in shallow jerks. "Found down near the docks," the medic said. "No name. Pressure dropping." Mara leaned close. "Hey," she said, voice low enough to be private. "Stay with me." The man's eyes flickered. For a moment they caught on hers, not as recognition, but as a grasp. The monitor stuttered. The room tightened. Mara's hands did not. Leads, oxygen, compressions, meds, the rhythm kept boring on purpose. The doctor called time, and the sound of the room kept going anyway. Mara cleaned the man's chest with a towel until the blood and gel and fingerprints were gone. She pulled the sheet up corner to chin and tucked it with the same careful fold she used when the patient could still feel the air. "There's no family listed," the doctor said. Mara nodded once. No name meant no one to call. It also meant no one to blame. She stripped off her gloves and washed her hands. She washed longer than necessary until her skin felt tight. Water ran over her knuckles, over the tape, over the small scars that did not match any hospital story. The rest of the shift blurred into triage questions and tired faces. Near midnight, she signed her last note, unclipped her badge, and stepped outside with her scrubs still on. The uniform made people assume she belonged wherever she stood. The night air hit her face and scraped the hospital smell out of her nose. She listened for urgency and heard none. Just engines far off and the faint rush of water. She drove without thinking about the route. The rusty buoy sat behind warehouses near the shipyard where the wind carried salt and diesel and the low thrum of machinery. The sign out front was a painted buoy with rust bleeding into the edges. Light leaked from the windows in tired bands. A neon beer logo in the corner blinked out every few seconds, then came back like it regretted quitting. Mara parked behind the building where the pavement buckled and gravel filled the cracks. She paused with her hand on the door handle, feeling the cold metal, letting her breathing settle into something even. When she stepped out, her prosthetic clicked against stone, and then the sound was swallowed by distance. Inside, heat and fried food wrapped around her. Beer and grease, spilled liquor, cheap cologne. Music hummed from a tired speaker that buzzed in the low notes. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed too loud at a joke that did not earn it. The bar was full without being lively, the kind of noise that sat heavy and stayed. June Park stood behind the counter, sleeves rolled, hands moving, as if they refused to learn stillness. There were old scars on her forearms, thin white lines that belonged to a different uniform. She looked up and saw Mara, then did not make a show of it. Just a nod. A glass of water slid down the bar and stopped in front of Mara without spilling. Condensation left a cold smear on the wood. Mara sat near the end, where she could see the door and the mirror behind the bottles at the same time. Her left leg angled under the stool, black carbon and metal made ordinary by repetition. The foot rested on the rung at an angle that looked casual if you did not know what to look for. She did not order alcohol. She never did. She was not here for numbness. She was here for the room to get bored and forget to notice her. June set a small bowl of pretzels beside the glass. "You look like you fought the building," she said. Mara took a sip. The water was cold enough to bite. The building won. June's eyes stayed on her for a beat. "You eat today." Mara stared at the pretzels like they were a dare. "I'll manage." June turned away and wiped a spill that did not need wiping. Mara watched the water gather under the glass, a clean circle darkening the wood. Thin at first, then wider as time passed. She watched it like it was something that could be measured. Her fingers found the edge of the canvas bag at her hip, inside a small piece of metal pressed against fabric. She rubbed it once between thumb and forefinger, then let it go. A man 2 stools away glanced at her scrubs and looked down at his beer. A woman in a denim jacket followed his eyes and looked away again. Nobody stared for long. A younger guy in a ball cap tried to flirt with June and got a look that shut him down without words. He laughed like it was a joke, paid his tab, and drifted away. June took the money with hands that did not shake. She leaned in while she refilled a pitcher. "You were out at the deck earlier," she said. Mara kept her gaze on the ring. "I had a class." "You like teaching?" "I like quiet hands," Mara said. June's mouth twitched. "That is not the same thing." On the wall behind the bar hung a faded photograph of sailors grinning in bright sun. One face had been scratched out with ink pressed too hard, the paper torn under it. The torn patch looked darker than the rest, like a bruise that never faded. In the corner beneath the television playing a muted sports game, an old man sat alone. A cane leaned against his chair. His beer sat untouched for long stretches. His gaze was steady, not drunk. Mara saw him look at her. Not at the scrubs, not at the leg, at the way she sat with the door in her peripheral vision. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if checking a detail against memory. Then he looked away slow, like he had seen something he did not want to name. The bell above the door gave a tired jingle as people came and went. Each time, Mara's muscles tightened, then released. She hated the reflex. She let it happen anyway. June came back, voice lower. "You want me to walk you out later?" Mara did not look up. No. June waited for her to soften it. Mara did not. June straightened and moved down the bar, polishing a glass that was already clean. Mara shifted on the stool and adjusted her leg under the counter. The familiar deep ache sat in the socket, not sharp, just present. She breathed through it. Her scrubs pulled slightly at the collar. She did not touch that spot. The music changed to something slower, a voice stretched thin over a tired guitar. Conversation dropped into a lazy murmur. For a few minutes, the room sounded almost gentle. Mara kept her glass in place. The condensation ring thickened dark at the edges, clean in the center. She watched it widen. The bell above the door jingled again, sharper this time, followed by the heavy stamp of boots on the floor. Mara did not turn right away. She felt the shift before she saw it, the way a room tightens around a certain kind of noise. The music kept playing, but it sounded smaller. Conversation did not stop. It thinned like people were trying to leave their words on the table and step away. Leather jackets filled the doorway, dark denim, chain wallets that flashed when they moved. The smell hit next cigarettes and road dust, and cold air pulled in from outside. A group of men walked in with laughter, already rolling ahead of them, loud enough to claim space before they did. One of them slapped the door frame as he entered like it belonged to him. Another called something to the bartender that sounded friendly until you heard the teeth under it. June looked up once, expression flat, and went back to wiping the counter. The men fanned out without thinking about anyone they brushed past. A shoulder bumped a woman near the end of the bar. She steadied her drink and stared into it like it had suddenly become interesting. A guy in a ball cap slid off his stool to make room and did not meet their eyes. Mara watched them in the mirror behind the bottles. She did not need to turn to know which one was leading. The leader moved like he expected doors to open before he touched them. Duke Mallory wore a jacket with a stitched patch on the back, a white wave breaking over a black line. Breakwater riders. His hair was a little too neat for the rest of him, as if he had decided that being dangerous worked better when it looked controlled. He spotted Mara almost immediately. Not because she was loud, because she was still. His grin widened as he came closer. He stopped there 2 stools away, close enough that the heat of him reached her. Close enough that she could smell beer on his breath and something sharper underneath a sweet chemical edge like cheap energy drinks. "Well," Duke said, voice carrying, "look at this." He nudged the man beside him with an elbow. The friend laughed too hard. A nurse Duke went on, eyes sliding over Mara's scrubs like they were an invitation. "Still in uniform. That is commitment." Mara took a sip of water. The cold bit her tongue. She set the cup down in the same spot. The condensation ring darkened at the edges. Duke leaned in a little. "Rough shift, sweetheart." Mara did not look at him. No. The word landed plain. No anger, no tremor, no apology, just a door closing. Duke blinked once as if he had not heard her right. Then he laughed, thick and confident. "Come on!" That was not an answer. It was Mara said. His friend, a broad guy with a shaved head, chuckled. "Maybe she did not hear you right, Duke." Duke's smile held, but the corners tightened. He rested his forearm on the bar, boxing her in with his body, even without touching her. "You look lonely," he said. "We can fix that." June's hand paused on a glass. She did not look over. Her posture stiffened anyway. Mara finally turned her head. Her eyes were tired, not scared. Tired in a way that did not invite bargaining. I said no, she told him. For a moment, Duke kept the grin like it was glued on. Then something in him flickered. Pride. Ego. The need to win because someone had not played along. His voice rose just enough for the nearest tables to hear. What is that, huh? You think you are too good for us? Mara's gaze stayed on him. It did not sharpen. It did not soften. It simply stayed. Duke glanced down at her scrubs, at the hospital badge clipped near her collar. You walk in here dressed like that, he said, and act like you do not want attention. Mara's fingers tightened around the cup. Plastic creaked faintly. June moved a step closer behind the bar, still wiping, still not making it a confrontation. Mara set the cup down. The ring it left behind spread wider, a darker halo. She slid off the stool. The movement was slow and deliberate, like she was giving him time to make a better choice. Her left foot touched the floor with a soft click. It was a small sound. It carried anyway. Duke's eyes dropped, and the grin returned this time with a different flavor. He looked at her leg the way he had looked at her scrubs, like it was something he could turn into a joke. "Aw," Duke said, dragging the word out. "You got issues." Mara stepped back just enough to clear the stool. "Move," she said. Duke did not. He leaned closer instead, shoulders wide, chin lifted, or what he asked. Mara's jaw worked once, not anger, control. "Or you keep your hands to yourself," she said. Duke laughed again louder. It was not the sound of someone amused. It was the sound of someone making sure everyone knew he was not being challenged. His friend with the shaved head added, "She is spicy." A couple at a booth glanced over and then looked down at their fries. Someone at the far end of the bar shifted on their stool, preparing to leave, without making it obvious. Mara's gaze flicked to the door, then back. Her shoulders stayed level. Duke reached out. Not fast. Not like he was afraid she might run, like he expected her to hold still. His fingers caught the front of her scrub top just below the collar. Fabric bunched in his fist. He pulled her toward him. Mara's body resisted on instinct. The prosthetic foot caught slightly on the floor. Another click, sharper this time. "Hey," June said finally, voice tight. "That is enough." Duke did not even glance at her. He focused on Mara, eyes bright with the thrill of crossing a line. Mara's hand went to his wrist, not to fight to stop. Her grip was firm, precise, placed on bone and tendon, like she knew exactly how much pressure it took to make fingers open. Duke felt it and mistook it for resistance he could crush. He jerked harder. The sound snapped through the bar. Rip. The fabric tore open from collar to mid-chest. Buttons scattered and clicked against wood. For a second, the only sound was the buzz in the speaker and the soft clink of a glass someone had set down too fast. Mara did not gasp. She did not scramble to cover herself. Air hit her skin, cold then warm from the room. Beneath her collarbone, black ink bloomed into view. A blade simple and sharp, angled slightly downward like it was meant to point at a heart. The lines were clean, deliberate, not decorative. Below the blades sat a number, 71, stamped in the same black, straight, unforgiving. Duke froze with his hand still fisted in torn cloth. His grin faltered for the first time. It came back a heartbeat later, forced, loud. "Oh, hell," he said, and laughed as if he had discovered something funny. "Look at that!" The shaved head friend leaned in, eyes widening. "What is that, your score?" Another biker snorted. 71, damn. That is ambitious. Duke recovered fast because men like him did. He pointed with 2 fingers, keeping his other hand on her shirt like he owned it. "That your body count, sweetheart?" he asked, voice thick with mockery. "You keeping track?" The laughter around him rose not because they were genuinely amused, but because they needed the room to go back to normal. They needed a joke big enough to cover the feeling that something was off. Mara looked down once at the torn fabric hanging open. Then she looked back up at Duke. Her voice stayed level. It was quiet enough that the bikers had to lean in to hear it. "It is my kill count," she said. The laughter stopped like a switch had been flipped. A glass clinked against the bar somewhere, and then nothing else moved. Even the speaker seemed to hum softer, as if the music had decided it did not belong in this moment. Duke's smile held for a fraction of a second. Then it slipped. He tried to scoff, but the sound came out wrong. "Sure," he said. "That is cute." Mara did not change her expression. She did not threaten him. She did not raise her voice. She just stood there with the blade and the number exposed, as if covering it would be a waste of effort. Duke glanced at her left leg again, then back at her face. His eyes searched for the punchline, for the wink, for any signal that this was performance. Mara gave him none. June's hands rested on the counter, knuckles pale from pressure. Her eyes stayed on Duke now, no longer pretending the scene was not hers. Behind Mara, a chair scraped as someone stood too quickly and thought better of it. Footsteps did not follow. The person sat back down, trapped by their own hesitation. In the corner beneath the muted television, the old man with the cane set his beer down with care. His fingers trembled slightly. The glass made a soft, final sound on the table. He stared at Mara's tattoo as if he had just been given a name he had not heard in years. His mouth opened, then closed. His throat worked like he was swallowing something bitter. Mara noticed him without turning her head. She felt his recognition like heat on the back of her neck. Duke shifted his weight and tried to reclaim the air. "You hear her," he said to his crew, forcing a laugh that did not catch. "She is a killer." Nobody joined him. One of the bikers looked past Mara toward the door, suddenly aware of how far it was. Another rubbed his palms on his jeans, eyes fixed on the floor. Duke's hand loosened on Mara's torn shirt. He let go without admitting it was a retreat. His fingers hung awkwardly in the air, as if they had forgotten what they were supposed to do. Mara used the moment to pull the fabric back across her chest, not to hide, to reset the line. Her fingers moved with the same calm she had used with the tourniquet earlier, slow and exact. The torn edges did not meet. The ink still showed through the gap. Duke swallowed. It was small, but Mara saw it. She saw the way his throat bobbed and how his eyes flicked to June, searching for backup he did not deserve. June did not give it. "You need to leave her alone," June said, voice steady. Duke stared at Mara again, anger trying to spark back to life. He lifted his chin. "She started it," he said louder, as if volume could make it true. Mara's eyes stayed on him. "You touched me," she said. "That is what you did." Duke's face reddened. His pride could not find a way out. He reached again, not for her shirt this time, but to shove her shoulder hard enough to knock her back and make the room laugh with him. Mara shifted her stance a fraction, bracing. The click of her prosthetic sounded again, small and sharp. Duke's palm hit her and found no collapse. She absorbed the force and stayed upright. The shove only pushed her a half step, and the stool behind her creaked. A couple of bikers flinched, as if they expected her to swing. Mara did not. That was worse for them. Duke blinked, thrown by the lack of reaction. He looked around for the laughter that should have come. The bar gave him nothing. He opened his mouth, ready to spit something ugly. Something that would put her back in a box, he understood. In the corner, the old man slid a hand into his jacket pocket. His eyes never left the blade beneath Mara's collarbone. His breathing looked heavy, like each inhale dragged up sand from someplace far away. Mara watched Duke's face and heard the faint tap of a cane against wood. One slow beat, then another. The room stayed still, holding its breath, in the space between a joke and something that could not be laughed off. Duke tried to fill it. He forced a laugh that came out thin. "You hear yourself," he said, louder now for the benefit of his crew. "Kill count. Jesus." Nobody joined him. The sound died before it reached the far wall. Mara did not move. Her torn scrubs hung uneven, the black blade and the number visible in the gap. She kept her shoulders level. Her eyes stayed on Duke like he was a problem already solved. Duke's jaw worked. He pointed at her leg as if that was where the weakness had to be. "You gonna chase us down?" he asked. "You gonna limp after me if I walk away?" Mara's expression did not change. "Sit," she said. One word, no volume, no heat. The shaved head biker blinked, then laughed once, quick and nervous. "Nah," he said as if he was joking. But his feet shifted anyway. Not toward her. Away. Duke heard it. He saw his own control slipping, and the panic in him found a new target. He jabbed a finger at June. "You letting her mouth off in your place." June's hands stayed on the bar. Her face was flat. "You tore her shirt," she said. Duke's head snapped back to Mara. Then cover up, he spat like her exposed skin had insulted him. "You want attention dressed like that?" Mara's gaze flicked to his hand and back to his face. She spoke as if she was reading a chart. "You put your hands on me," she said. "That is the whole story." A chair creaked somewhere behind Duke. Someone shifted, deciding whether they were going to stand up or stay small. The muted television in the corner showed a slow replay of a sports play nobody watched. The crowd noise was turned down, but it still sounded like a distant sea. In that corner, the old man did not look away. Eddie Rourke's beer sat on the table with a clean ring beneath it. His fingers hovered near the glass, and then moved past it to the cane leaning against his chair. He stood with care like his bones had their own weather. The cane tapped the floor once, then again. Tap, tap. He reached into his jacket and took out a phone that looked too simple for the way he held it. His thumb hesitated over the screen, then pressed. He brought it to his ear and turned his head, slightly shielding his words from the room. His eyes never left Mara's chest. Mara felt him. She did not turn, but she knew exactly where he was, the same way she knew where the exits were, the same way she knew where hands were drifting. Duke saw Eddie move and scoffed. "Who you calling Grandpa?" he said. "Your kids." Eddie did not answer. His mouth moved in a tight line. He listened, then spoke again, quieter. The cane tapped once more, not from weakness, from insistence. June's eyes found Eddie, and her face tightened in recognition of a different kind. She had seen that look before, the look a person wears when they decide they cannot pretend anymore. Duke stepped forward again. He was too close. He liked that. He liked being the thing people had to breathe around. His palm lifted like he meant to shove Mara again. Mara shifted her stance a fraction. Click! The prosthetic made a small sound against the wood. Her left shoulder turned just enough to take away his clean angle. Duke hesitated, and the hesitation embarrassed him. He turned it into aggression. He shoved anyway. Mara absorbed the force and gave him nothing. No stumble, no flinch, her eyes stayed steady. That steadiness hit Duke harder than a punch would have. The shaved head biker took a half step back without meaning to. Another biker's laugh came out and then cut off. The room tightened again, this time around the bikers. June's voice sharpened. "Duke," she said, using his name like a warning. Duke's head snapped to her. "How do you know my name?" he demanded. June did not answer that. She did not need to. Eddie's call ended. He lowered the phone, slowly, like the device had weight. For a moment, he stared at the dark screen, then slid it back into his jacket. He moved one careful step toward Mara. The cane tapped. Tap, tap. Mara's eyes flicked to him now. Not fear, not surprise. Something older. Eddie stopped a few feet away, close enough that he could see the ink, clearly close enough that he could see the faint scars near her collarbone that did not belong to surgery. His throat worked. "I know that blade," he said. Duke laughed too loud, too relieved to have a new angle. "It is a tattoo," he said. "People get those." Eddie ignored him. His gaze stayed on Mara. "I saw it on a shoulder patch," he said, voice low and steady. "Persian Gulf. Long time ago. Different number." Mara's jaw tightened. Not anger. Control. "You should not be here," she said to Eddie. He smiled faintly, but it did not reach his eyes. "Funny," he said. "That is what you always used to say." Mara's eyes narrowed slightly. She did not ask how he knew her. The question would have been noise. Duke's voice rose again, trying to claw back the room. "What is this?" he barked. "Some old war story." He looked around for agreement. He found none. June leaned in toward Mara without making it obvious. "Do you want me to call someone?" she asked quietly. Mara did not look at her. "Someone already did," she said. June's breath caught. A low engine sound rolled past outside. Not motorcycles. Something heavier, controlled. It did not roar. It idled like it had all the time in the world. Duke heard it and frowned, glancing toward the window. One of his crew followed his gaze uneasy. Eddie's grip tightened on his cane. "They were not supposed to find you," he said, and there was no drama in it, just certainty. Mara's shoulders stayed level. "I did not come to be found," she said. Duke scoffed. "Nobody is finding anybody," he said. "It is a bar." The bell above the door jingled. Not from a gust, not from a sloppy shove. It jingled because someone opened the door carefully. 8 men came in. They did not wear uniforms, no patches, no badges. Dark jackets, plain boots, faces that did not advertise anything. They moved like they had rehearsed staying calm in loud rooms. Their eyes scanned corners, hands exits the space behind the bar, the line of sight to Mara. The music did not stop, but it sounded wrong now, like a joke told at a funeral. The first man through the door took in Duke's hand position, Mara's torn scrubs, the ink on her skin. His gaze tightened a fraction. The man behind him, a taller one with close-cut hair and a controlled stillness, stepped forward like he already owned the air. He did not raise his voice. "Hands off her," he said. It landed like weight. Duke froze mid-breath. His crew went still with him. They did not understand what they were looking at, but their bodies did. June's shoulders eased a hair, then locked again. Relief was a luxury. She kept her hands on the bar palms flat. Mara did not look relieved. She did not look surprised. She only exhaled slowly, as if she had been holding her breath longer than she realized. The tall man's eyes stayed on her. They did not flicker to the number and linger like a stranger's would. His look was clinical, familiar, like a file opened in his head. He took one step closer, not into her space, just close enough that he could speak without carrying his voice across the room. "Mara Quinn," he said. Hearing her name out loud in this place made something in the bar shift. A few heads turned. A few people looked away again, as if eye contact could make them accountable. Mara's gaze met his. "Halden," she said. Duke's head snapped between them. "You know him," he demanded, voice cracking at the edges. Halden did not look at Duke. Not once. "We received a call," Halden said, eyes still on Mara. "A mark showed up that should not." Mara's mouth tightened. "You should have ignored it." Halden's expression did not change. "We do not ignore certain marks." Behind him, 2 of his men moved to the windows and peered out through the blinds. Another stepped toward the bikers, not threatening, just present, forcing distance without touching anyone. Duke tried to puff up, trying to remember how to be the biggest thing in the room. He squared his shoulders. "Who are you?" he asked too loud. "Cops?" Halden finally glanced at him. The look was brief and flat, like checking a stain. "No," Halden said. That one syllable drained color from Duke's face. He swallowed hard and looked away like his eyes had found something on the floor worth studying. Eddie stepped forward another careful pace. His cane tapped once loud in the silence. They listed you dead, Eddie said to Mara. Mara's eyes stayed on Halden. That was the point, she replied. Halden's jaw flexed once. We had you gone, he said, voice quieter now for her alone. Not just off record. Gone. Mara's fingers curled once, then loosened. She tugged the torn fabric closer, not to hide the ink, but to close the cold gap against her skin. June spoke, voice steady but thin. This is a bar, she said. What is happening? Halden did not answer June directly. He gestured with 2 fingers, and one of his men drifted toward the back of the room, eyes on the doorways, counting. Halden kept his attention on Mara. Come with us, he said. Mara held his gaze. No, she said, same words she had used with Duke, same calm, same flat door. Halden did not react as if he had been challenged. He nodded slightly like he had expected it. Then we talk here, he said. One of Halden's men murmured from the window, low enough that only their group heard it. Vehicles outside, he said. Mara's eyes flicked toward the blinds. The engine sound outside stayed steady, patient. Duke's breathing had turned shallow. He rubbed his palms on his jeans, eyes darting now, searching for a way to make this normal again. His crew did not laugh anymore. They sat in their bodies like the room had become too small. Eddie's voice trembled, not from fear, from memory. I watched men die under that blade, he said softly, and his eyes went distant for a second. I watched one of them live because of you. Mara's face did not soften, but something in her eyes shifted a small crack that closed again immediately. Halden's gaze dropped once to the ink, to the number, then returned to her face. 71, he said, not as a question. Mara did not answer. The speaker in the corner buzzed and hissed between songs. Somebody at a table cleared their throat, and it sounded like a mistake. Outside over the shipyard and the road, a deeper sound began to build low at first, almost like distant thunder. The glass bottles behind the bar trembled faintly in their racks. Mara stood very still, shoulders level, eyes forward, the torn scrubs held closed in one hand. Her left foot settled on the floor with a quiet click, and the room remained caught in the same tight silence, waiting for the next breath to decide where it belonged. Outside over the shipyard and the road, a deeper sound began to build low at first, almost like distant thunder. The bottles behind the bar trembled in their racks. Halden lifted his hand, and every man with him shifted. It was not dramatic. It was practiced. Back door, one of them murmured. 2 moved toward the hallway. Another stepped between the bikers and the stools, making the space narrower without touching anyone. The space around Mara cleared as if the air itself had been told to step away. Duke tried to laugh, a reflex searching for air. This is insane, he said, voice cracking. Halden's gaze stayed on Mara. Put your hands on the counter, he told Duke. Duke stared like he had not heard. Then his palms went down on sticky wood. His friends followed quiet now. June's throat worked. Mara, she said soft. Mara kept her eyes on Halden. You brought a rotor, she said. Halden's mouth tightened. We did not bring it. That answer landed colder than the night air. Mara pressed the torn fabric closed, refusing the room access. Eddie stood behind her, cane planted. They were listening, he said. A pulse of sound rolled through the walls. The low beat was closer now, heavy enough to be felt in the ribs. The speaker in the corner buzzed between songs, then fell into a thin hiss. Halden nodded once. Clear the room. One of his men spoke to the bar, voice firm. Everyone leaves. Phones down. Chairs scraped. People filed out with the careful speed of people who did not want to be noticed. The smell of fries and beer turned sour. June leaned in close to Mara and slid a small roll of medical tape into her palm. Close your shirt, she said. Mara tore 2 strips with her teeth and pressed fabric to fabric across the tear. Not neat. Enough. The ink disappeared behind blue cloth, but she could still feel the heat of it. Duke watched the room empty and tried to find his swagger. You cannot just throw people out, he said, and the word cannot sounded like a plea. One of Halden's men stepped closer. You are still breathing, he said. Stay quiet. Duke swallowed and nodded fast. Light flickered across the blinds in quick pulses. Bottles threw sharp shadows. June's eyes went to the window. That is a helicopter, she said. Eddie's grip tightened on his cane. Black, he murmured. Halden spoke into a mic under his collar, voice low. Confirm air contact. June moved down the bar, keys in hand, locking drawers and gates with quick, competent motions. Mara's gaze went to the water glass she had left. Condensation pooled under it and spread into a dark ring. The cup sat over the center like a lid. Lock up, Mara said. June nodded once. Halden stepped to Mara's side, careful not to crowd her. We are leaving, he said. Mara did not move, not through the front. Halden glanced at the last patron slipping out. Agreed. Duke craned his neck. Where are you taking her? He asked, voice smaller now. Halden turned and looked at him, brief flat. Away from you. Mara faced Duke. Her voice stayed level. You touched me, she said. That is what you did. Duke opened his mouth. Nothing came out. June locked the front door after the last patron left. The bell jingled once lonely and thin. Halden's team guided Mara toward the back, not hands on her, just angles and presence. Eddie followed, cane tapping. In the hallway, the smell changed. Less beer, more bleach and old wood. A bulb buzzed above the storeroom door. Halden glanced back at Eddie. You stop at the threshold, he said. Eddie lifted his chin. I already did, he answered. Halden held his gaze for a beat, then did not argue again. The back door opened. Cold air hit them clean and sharp. The rotor beat was huge now, not a sound but a force. Dust skated across the gravel. The wind tugged at Mara's taped scrubs and pulled the fabric tight across her collarbone. 3 dark SUVs sat behind the building with headlights off, engines idling low. Farther out beyond the fence line, a helicopter hovered, with its lights-dimmed rotors chopping the night into pieces. Mara planted her left foot. The prosthetic absorbed the push. Click, then steady. Eddie leaned forward, shouting over the noise. They said you were dead. Mara turned her head slightly. They needed me dead. Eddie's face twisted. And you let them? Mara's answer came simple. Yes. Eddie stared at her, as if he wanted a different word. Then he nodded once, like that was all he could do with it. Halden guided Mara to the nearest SUV. A door opened. The inside was dark clean, smelling faintly of leather and disinfectant. Mara paused and glanced back. June stood in the doorway, keys clenched in one fist. Her face was pale, eyes wide, but she did not look away. Eddie stood beside her, with his cane-braced jacket flattened by rotor wash. June, Mara called. June leaned forward. Yeah. Do not talk about me. June's lips pressed into a line. I do not know you, she said, and the lie sounded like shelter. Mara nodded once. Good. Eddie raised his cane slightly. Nightjar, he said, softer now. Mara did not correct him. She slid into the SUV. The door shut with a solid click that cut the wind down to a muffled thrum. The rotor beat became distant, still heavy but contained. Dashboard lights brightened, throwing pale glow across the seats. Mara sat back and kept her hands on her knees. The tape seam at her collar pulled when she breathed. She did not adjust it. Someone sat across from Mara. A woman older than Halden, posture, straight hair, pulled back tight. No insignia, no jewelry. Her eyes were calm and sharp. She watched Mara the way a person watches a lock they once had the key to. Halden slid into the front passenger seat. The driver did not look back. The SUV rolled forward smooth, leaving gravel behind. The woman across from Mara spoke at last, voice steady, almost polite. Mara Quinn, she said. Mara met her gaze. That name is retired. The woman's mouth moved in something that was not quite a smile. So were you, she replied. Mara held the woman's gaze and let the silence do its work. It made people itch. The SUV rolled out of the lot. Streetlights slid across the tinted glass in pale bands. The rotor beat stayed behind them, but Mara could still feel it in her teeth. You were declared dead, the woman said. Not missing, dead. Mara's fingers curled once on her knees. Because missing gets searched for. Halden's voice came from the front seat, even and controlled. We shut the file. We burned what could point to you. And yet, the woman said. Mara tilted her head a fraction. Eddie called you. He recognized the mark, Halden replied. Mara's mouth tightened. Oh, he should not have. The woman leaned forward slightly. The mark should not exist, she said. Not on a civilian nurse in scrubs. Mara breathed in through her nose. The tape at her collar tugged. Under it, ink sat warm against skin, like a bruise that never finished healing. You came with 8 men, Mara said. That is not concern, that is containment. The woman's eyes stayed calm. Containment is how we keep rooms from turning into graves, she said. Mara watched her hands. No rings, clean nails cut short. A person who did not reach for comfort. What do you want, Mara asked. The woman answered with a name calm and plain. Helena Cross. Mara did not react. Names were just handles. Cross continued. I want you to stop existing in places where you can be grabbed. Mara gave a small, humorless exhale. I was grabbed by a drunk with a bad jacket. Cross's gaze did not soften, and a call went out. Halden glanced back for a moment, quick. Your identifier lit systems that should not light, he said. Mara stared at her own faint reflection in the window. Nurse, ghost, proof. The city slid past like it did not care which one she was tonight. Mara kept her hands still and listened anyway. Helena Cross sat across from her, with the same posture she might have carried into a briefing room or a chapel. Straight spine, quiet eyes, the kind of calm that did not ask permission to exist. Outside the tinted windows, Norfolk rolled by in soft streaks. Ship masts, sodium streetlights, a diner sign glowing blue against wet pavement. The city looked ordinary enough to make the inside of the vehicle feel unreal. Halden's voice came again from the front controlled. We are rerouting. We have a secure facility. Mara did not look at him. Define secure. Halden paused. Secure enough for tonight. That is not an answer, Mara said. Cross watched her for a beat. It is an answer, she replied. Just not one you like. Mara's jaw worked once. The tape at her collar pulled with her breathing. She resisted the urge to touch it. Touching it would be admitting something had shifted. Cross leaned forward slightly, hands resting on her knees. You have been living like a civilian, she said, as if describing weather. Working in a hospital, teaching on a deck, sitting in a bar. I am a civilian, Mara said. Cross's gaze flicked to Mara's chest, to the spot hidden behind tape and fabric. Civilians do not carry that mark. Mara's eyes stayed steady. It is ink. Cross's voice did not change. It is a ledger. The word landed clean. Ledger. Not trophy, not brag, just accounting. Mara looked out the window again. Her reflection hovered in the glass. A tired face, a collar pulled a little too tight, eyes that kept scanning even when she told herself to stop. Halden spoke softly, almost careful. Your identifier did not just light one system. Mara finally turned her head toward him. How many? Halden glanced at Cross, then back to the road. Enough to make this a problem. Cross filled the silence. I am here because your life is now a signal. Mara's throat tightened. I did not signal. Cross gave a small nod, like she had expected that. No, someone else did it for you. Mara pictured Eddie's trembling hand holding a phone, his cane tapping the floor, the way he looked at her tattoo like it was a photograph pulled from ash. He recognized it, Mara said. Yes, Cross replied. And recognition travels. Mara stared at her hands. The tape on her knuckle was peeling at the edge. She picked at it once, then stopped. Cross's tone stayed polite. You were listed dead. Mara's laugh came out short and dry. You keep saying that like it is a surprise. It is not a surprise, Cross said. It is a problem. Dead people do not cause paperwork. Dead people do not get grabbed in bars. Mara's eyes snapped up. I did not get grabbed because I was careless, she said. I got grabbed because men like him think silence is an invitation. Cross held her gaze. I am not disputing that. I am telling you that his hand was not the danger. Mara's mouth tightened. Do not do this, she said. Do not talk around it. Cross nodded once. Fine. Someone is watching for you. The driver took an exit, and the road narrowed. Warehouses gave way to fencing and low buildings. Cameras sat on poles like unblinking birds. A guard shack passed by without a stop. The gate lifted on its own. Mara watched the fence line slide past. Who authorized this? Cross's eyes did not blink. I did. Mara felt the familiar pressure behind her ribs, the old sensation of being moved like an object. She let it rise, then she pushed it down. Anger was easy. Control took work. Cross studied her face. You are exhausted, she said. Mara gave a small shrug. That happens when you work emergency. Cross did not take the bait. That happens when you have not slept without listening for footsteps. Mara looked away again. Halden shifted in his seat voice, quieter. You should know, he said, I did not want to bring a team into a bar. We were forced. Mara watched the road. By what? Halden's jaw flexed. By the mark in the number and the call. Mara's fingers curled once. You could have waited until morning. Cross answered for him. Morning does not make you safer. It just makes other people faster. The SUV slowed near a low concrete building with minimal signage. No flag. No welcoming lights. Just a few dim lamps and two guards who did not react as the vehicle rolled up. Another SUV sat parked near the entrance engine, off windows black. The driver cut the engine. The sudden quiet was heavy. Cross opened her door first. Cool night air slipped in crisp and damp. Mara stepped out and adjusted her leg with a small shift of her hip. Click. The sound was sharp in the stillness. Halden came around to her side. This way, he said. Mara walked without rushing. The building smelled faintly of dust and clean paper. A corridor led to a room with a metal table, two chairs, a wall screen glowing with a map that meant nothing to her. Cross gestured to a chair. Sit. Mara sat not because she was obeying, but because her body wanted the support. Cross remained standing for a moment, then sat opposite her. Halden stayed near the door, not blocking it, but close enough that the line was clear. Cross folded her hands. I'm going to speak plainly, she said. Mara nodded once. Try it. Cross did not react to the edge in her tone. We need you contained. Not to punish you, to keep you from being used. Mara leaned back slightly. Used by who? Cross's eyes stayed on Mara's face. That depends on who is paying attention. Mara's mouth tightened. You do not know. Cross answered softly. Not yet. Silence settled. The building hummed with ventilation. Somewhere far off, a door closed with a muted click. Mara broke it. You called me an asset. Cross met her gaze. You were. I was a medic, Mara said. Cross nodded. You were a medic who moved under fire. You were a medic who carried a rifle when there was no one else to carry one. Mara's face hardened. Do not romanticize it. Cross's voice stayed even. I am not. I am naming the truth you keep trying to edit. Mara looked down at the tape seam on her scrubs. She pressed a finger against it, not to open it, just to feel that it held. Cross continued, careful. Your file lists you as dead because it was the safest outcome. It allowed you to disappear. It allowed you to erase me, Mara replied. Cross's expression shifted subtle. The closest thing to regret. Those can be the same thing. Mara's throat tightened. For a moment she saw faces that did not belong in this room. Sand and eyelashes. Hands slipping in blood. Someone calling her name and then stopping mid-syllable. She blinked once and the room returned. I walked away, Mara said. No debrief, no pension, no apology. Cross did not deny it. You were given a door. A door that locked behind me, Mara said. Halden looked at the floor. He did not argue. That told Mara everything she needed about how much of this he could control. Cross leaned forward a fraction. You have been living as Mara Quinn, ER nurse, she said. You have been doing good work. Mara's lips pressed together. Praise from Cross felt like a hand looking for a grip. I'm not here to recruit you back into the field, Cross said. Mara's eyes lifted. Then why am I here? Cross's voice stayed calm. Because your existence has resurfaced. We can either pretend you did not, or we can place you somewhere we can protect you. Mara let out a slow breath. Protection is just another word. Cross's gaze held. For control. Mara nodded once. There it is. Cross did not flinch. Yes. Mara sat forward slightly. I am not going back. Cross answered without heat. Define back. Mara's voice turned cold. Guns, doors, night, lists. Cross watched her carefully. I'm not asking you to deploy. Mara waited. Cross continued. 2 years. You train medical operators. You train trauma response. You train female candidates who keep getting filtered out for the wrong reasons. You do not deploy. You do not carry a weapon on assignment. You do not leave the perimeter without clearance. Mara's eyes narrowed, and after 2 years, Cross's gaze stayed steady. You walk. Mara stared at her for a long moment. Cross did not look away. That was either honesty or experience. Mara spoke slowly. You do not get to own my time. Cross nodded once. Then do not give it. Contract it. Mara gave a short laugh. You are good at making cages sound like choices. Cross's voice was quiet. I am good at keeping people alive. Mara's hands tightened on the chair arms. You did not keep my team alive? The room went still. Even the ventilation sounded quieter. Cross did not blink. No, she said. I did not. Mara held her gaze and waited for the excuse. None came. Cross spoke again softer. I can keep the next ones alive longer. Mara swallowed. The word next ones rubbed against raw edges she pretended were scar tissue. She took a breath. If I do this, she said, it is on my terms. Cross inclined her head. Name them. Mara did not hesitate. Full autonomy over curriculum. I teach what I decide matters. Cross nodded. Agreed. Veto power, Mara continued. Over who I train. Halden shifted slightly by the door. A small tell. Cross's eyes stayed on Mara. Cross asked why. Mara's voice stayed flat. Because I will not train people who treat medics as disposable, and I will not train people who think women only belong behind a desk. Cross held the silence for a beat, then nodded. Agreed. Mara went on. No media, no speeches, no ceremonies, no stories. Cross's mouth tightened slightly. That can be arranged. Mara leaned forward a fraction. And my name stays off every list. Cross paused. It was small, but it was there. Mara saw it and pressed. If you cannot do that, we are done. Cross studied her for a long moment. Then she spoke careful. It may not be possible to keep your name off all lists. Mara's eyes did not soften. Then it is possible to lose me? Cross's gaze sharpened. You are not a ghost anymore, she said. Mara's voice stayed steady. I can be. Silence held them again. Halden's hand moved once near his collar, then stopped. He was listening like someone watching two blades balance. Cross inhaled slowly. We will find a way, she said. You will not be paraded. Your location will be restricted. Your name will not be spoken in rooms that do not need it. Mara did not thank her. She did not smile. She simply nodded once, accepting the shape of the compromise. Cross reached into a folder and slid a single page across the table. No letterhead, no seal, just text and signatures. The kind of document that existed and did not exist at the same time. Mara looked at it without touching it. You promise no weapons. Cross's gaze stayed calm. We promise no deployments. That is not the same thing, Mara said. Cross nodded. It is not. Mara stared at the page again, then finally set her palm on it. Her fingers were steady. Her breathing was not. She slid it back. I will teach, she said. Cross's eyes did not change, but something in the room eased like a pressure valve turning. Mara added quieter, I do not belong to you. Cross held her gaze. Understood, she said. and the word sounded like it had been learned the hard way. Halden opened the door. "We have a room ready." Mara stood. Her leg clicked once on the tile. The sound was small. It still felt like a metronome inside her. They walked down a corridor lined with plain doors. No names. No numbers that meant anything. Just locks. At the end, Halden stopped and handed her a keycard. His eyes met hers for the first time since the bar. "You did not have to say the number out loud," he said. Mara held the card between two fingers. "I did not say it to impress anyone." Halden nodded. "I know." She swiped in. The room inside was clean and spare. A bed, a desk, a chair, a small bathroom. The light buzzed, faintly fluorescent and unforgiving. Halden stayed in the doorway. "Someone will be outside," he said. "Not inside." Mara looked at him. "Do not pretend that is comfort." Halden's mouth tightened. "Mole." "It is respect," he said, then stepped back and let the door close. The latch clicked. Mara stood in the center of the room for a moment and listened to the building breathe. Ventilation. Distant footsteps. A low hum under the walls. Her shoulders finally dropped a fraction. She reached up and peeled one strip of tape away from her collar, slow, careful. The fabric loosened. Cool air slid across her skin. She did not open it further. She pressed her palm against the spot beneath her collarbone anyway, as if her hand could hold the ink in place. Her eyes closed for half a second. When she opened them, the room looked the same. Clean, temporary, quiet. Mara sat on the edge of the bed, both hands resting on her knees, and allowed herself one long breath that no one else could hear. Mara sat on the edge of the bed, both hands on her knees, and let the quiet settle into her bones. The room smelled like new paint and filtered air. The mattress had that stiff give that made sleep feel like a task. A single cup sat on the desk beside a sealed bottle of water. The overhead light buzzed softly, the kind of sound you only noticed when you stopped moving. She stood and crossed to the desk. The keycard Halden gave her lay there like a thin promise. She twisted the cap off the water bottle and poured it into the cup, then drank in slow pulls until her throat stopped feeling tight. She set the cup down. A damp circle began to form beneath it, faint at first, then darker at the edges as the plastic sweated. The ring looked harmless. It rarely was. Mara sat again and pulled her canvas bag closer. The zipper rasped in the quiet. Inside was what she always carried and never talked about: a spare tourniquet, a packet of gauze, a small flashlight, a roll of tape. Her hands moved by habit, checking weight, checking placement. Her fingers found the small piece of metal wrapped in a strip of cloth. She unrolled it and held it in her palm. Half a dog tag edges cut clean the chain missing. Only part of the stamped letters remained. Enough to know it belonged to someone. Not enough to say who. Her thumb rubbed the grooves until they warmed. The ventilation hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a door opened and closed. Footsteps passed slow and measured, then faded. Whoever stood outside her room shifted their weight once. Leather creaked. Mara listened until the building's rhythm felt familiar. That was when the memory came. Not like a story, like a smell. Sand baked hot under a sun that had no mercy. The sharp sting of cordite. Metal so hot it burned through gloves. A voice in her ear on the radio clipped calm, then suddenly full of static. A hand pressed against her forearm, fingers slick, grip, desperate. Mara blinked and the safe room snapped back into place. White walls, a clean desk, a ring of water under a cup. Her own breathing. She stood abruptly and walked to the bathroom. The light there was harsher, bouncing off pale tile. She turned the faucet on and held her hands under cold water until her skin numbed. Her reflection looked like a stranger who had borrowed her face. Tired eyes, hair pulled tight, tape at her collar, the seam imperfect where she had patched it. She peeled away the tape slowly, then pulled the collar open just enough to see a corner of black ink. The blade. She did not look at the number. She did not need to. She covered it again and retaped the fabric with careful fingers. Neat this time. Precise. A small act of control in a room built from other people's rules. Back on the bed, she set the half tag on the nightstand and lay down without taking off her scrubs. Her prosthetic stayed on. Sleep without it made her feel unbalanced, like her body could not decide where it ended. She stared at the ceiling and listened. The building breathed. The hall stayed quiet. The distant hum never stopped. Mara closed her eyes. A flash of light behind her eyelids. Not a dream, a clip. A door splintering inward. A room full of dust and shouting. Someone coughing in the corner, a wet animal sound. Her own voice low in the dark, telling someone to breathe, telling someone not to move, telling someone it was going to be fine, even when she did not believe it. A hard crack, a body folding. The smell of burned wiring. Her eyes opened. The ceiling was still there. The light still buzzed. She turned her head and saw the water ring on the desk had spread wider. The cup sat in the center like a weight. Mara rolled onto her side and forced her breathing into something slow. In through the nose, out through the mouth, quiet enough that nobody outside would hear a change. Minutes passed, an hour that might have been 5. Her phone vibrated. The sound was small, but it snapped through her like a shot. Mara's hand was on it before her mind caught up. She had not turned it off. She had not wanted to. She told herself that was practicality. It was not. The screen glowed in the dark. Unknown number. One line of text sat there, plain and unadorned. They know you are alive. Mara did not move for a moment. The message did not explain itself. It did not need to. The words carried their own weight. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She did not type. Any response was a rope. She locked the screen and slid the phone under her thigh, feeling the hard rectangle through fabric. The hallway stayed quiet. Then came a knock. Not loud, not hurried. 2 taps. Banally. Mara sat up with a single motion and swung her feet to the floor. The click of her prosthetic was sharp on tile. Her hand went to the edge of the desk, fingers closing around the small flashlight. It was not a weapon. It could still break a nose. Another knock. Same pace, same restraint. Mara crossed the room and stood just to the side of the door, not in front of it. Her voice stayed low. Who? A pause, then a familiar rasp. It's Eddie. Mara's breath caught once and she let it out slow. She glanced at the peephole and saw a sliver of gray hair, a shoulder the top of a cane. She unlocked the door and opened it just enough to see him. Eddie Rourke stood in the hall with his cane in his left hand and a paper cup of coffee in his right. The coffee looked untouched. His face was lined deep, not from age alone, but from sun and wind and decisions. His eyes were sharper than they had been under the bar's greasy light. They let you through, Mara said. Eddie gave a small shrug that pulled at his jacket. Told them I already knew too much. Mara stepped out back. You shouldn't be here. Eddie's mouth twitched. Funny. You said that to them. You said it to me too. He moved into the room carefully. The cane tapped once on tile. He looked around like he was checking corners out of habit. He noticed the cup on the desk, the ring beneath it. His gaze held there a beat longer than necessary. You still drink water like it's medicine, he said. Mara closed the door. It keeps my hand steady. Eddie lowered himself into the chair by the desk with a soft grunt. He set the coffee down without drinking it. His knee bounced once, then stilled. Mara remained standing. Eddie looked up at her. You're alive, he said, and the words did not sound like relief. They sounded like a fact that changed the shape of a room. Mara's face stayed controlled. Yes, you vanished, Eddie said. No remains, no report, no closure. Mara's eyes went flat. You don't get closure. Eddie nodded like he already knew that answer. They said your team never came back, he continued. Mara's throat tightened. She looked at the desk, at the ring, at the cup's clear plastic edge. They came back, she said. Eddie waited. Just not alive, Mara finished. Eddie's fingers tightened on the handle of his cane. For a moment, he looked older than he had in the bar. I was there, he said quietly. Not the night you lost them. The operation before, the one near the refinery, you remember? Mara's jaw worked once. The memory tried to climb up. Heat, smoke. A man with eyebrows burned off laughing because pain had stopped making sense. I remember enough, she said. Eddie's eyes did not leave her face. You stayed longer than you should have, he said. You always did. Mara's mouth tightened. Don't. Eddie nodded, accepting the boundary. I recognized the blade, he said, shifting slightly in the chair. That mark was supposed to be buried. People don't just get it inked for style. It's not style, Mara said. Eddie's gaze dipped toward her collar. The tape held. The ink stayed hidden. He did not ask her to show it. He had already seen enough. They came fast, Eddie said. Too fast for a simple call. Mara's hand went to her pocket on instinct to the phone she had tucked earlier. She did not pull it out. Someone was listening, she said. Eddie's face tightened. That's what I'm saying. Mara finally sat, but she chose the edge of the bed, not the chair. Distance mattered. Not because she feared Eddie, because proximity made history louder. Eddie leaned forward. There's always a file, he said. Even when they say it's burned. Someone keeps a copy. Someone keeps a name. Mara stared at the floor. You're telling me what I already know. Eddie's voice roughened. No. I'm telling you what you're pretending not to. Mara lifted her gaze. Eddie held it steady. They didn't come tonight because a biker grabbed your shirt, Eddie said. They came because that call hit ears that never stopped listening. You think you walked into a bar? You walked into a net. Mara's fingers curled once, then relaxed. Eddie's eyes softened just a fraction. Are you teaching because you want to, he asked. Or because they put you in another box that looks better than a grave? Mara exhaled through her nose. Both. Eddie nodded once, satisfied by honesty more than comfort. He sat back and looked at the desk again. The ring had darkened as the air cooled. The circle seemed sharper now, like a stamp. You leave a mark, Eddie said. Even when you think you're invisible. Mara followed his gaze. I'm not trying to be invisible, she said. Eddie's mouth pulled tight. Maybe you should be. Maybe you shouldn't. Either way, people are going to decide things about you. Mara's phone vibrated again under her thigh. One short pulse. She did not reach for it. Eddie noticed the smallest shift in her posture, the way her shoulders tightened, the way her eyes moved a fraction toward the bed. You get a message, he said. Mara's voice stayed flat. Yes. Eddie did not ask to see it. He just nodded like the shape of it mattered more than the words. Loose ends, Eddie said quietly. Mara looked at him. Eddie's hand tightened on the cane again. That's what you are, he said. That's what I am. That's what that mark is. A loose end that somebody doesn't like flapping. Mara's throat tightened. Who? Eddie held her gaze. I don't know, he said. I know the feeling. I know the patience. I know what it looks like when someone waits. Mara sat very still. The safe room felt smaller. Eddie pushed himself up with a soft grunt. He did not want to leave, and he did not want to stay. His cane tapped once. They'll ask you questions, he said. Mara's eyes stayed on him. They already did. Eddie paused at the door. Answer the ones that keep you alive, he said. Mara did not respond. Eddie nodded once anyway and opened the door. The hallway light spilled and pale and clinical. He stepped out, then stopped and looked back at her, his expression heavy. You were good, he said, voice quiet. You still are. Mara's jaw tightened. Praise scraped at old wounds. Go home, she said. Eddie's mouth twitched. Home is a place I visit. He let the door close gently behind him. The latch clicked. Mara sat alone again. The building hummed. Footsteps passed once, then faded. The ring beneath the cup held its shape in the low light. She reached for her phone and slid it out from under her thigh. The screen lit her fingers a pale blue. Another message sat there, also from unknown. Stop hiding. You never learned how. Mara stared at it until the words stopped looking like letters and started looking like a hand on a doorknob. She locked the screen and set the phone face down on the nightstand beside the half-dog tag. Two objects, both small, both heavier than they should be. Mara lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling again. She listened to the air moving through vents. She listened to the building's quiet. She listened for a sound that did not belong. Her breathing slowed. Outside, the night kept going without her permission. Inside, the light buzzed softly, and the cup on the desk sat in its circle, patient and still. Morning arrived without ceremony. Pale light slid through the blinds and laid thin bars across the floor. Mara was awake before the light reached the bed. She lay still, listening. Ventilation. One soft step in the hall, a distant door. Nothing urgent. She sat up and adjusted the prosthetic. The latch clicked. The foot met tile with a crisp sound that grounded her. Click. She pulled on the fresh scrubs folded on the chair, plain navy, no name. The fabric felt new and stiff. Before she left, she pressed her fingertips to the spot beneath her collarbone, a brief check-like counting pulse. Two operators stood posted in the corridor. One nodded. Ma'am. A conference room waited at the end of the hall. Helena Cross stood by a wall screen that glowed with maps and colored lines. Halden lingered near the door. You're early, Cross said. I didn't sleep, Mara replied. Cross tapped the screen. 3 icons pulsed in different colors. Your identifier didn't just ping one system, Cross said. It triggered 3. Mara leaned back. Domestic. 1 is current, Cross said. 2 are older. Mara's jaw tightened. How old? Halden answered, voice low. Pre-consolidation, old secure channels. The kind people stopped using because they were too effective. Those channels should be dead, Mara said. Dormant, Cross replied. Not dead. Mara stared at the pulsing icons. So someone is listening for a key. Cross nodded. Or someone never stopped. Cross changed the map. A circle appeared near a road outside the city. We saw a civilian vehicle after dawn. Clean plates. Following protocol too well. Mara pushed her chair back and stood. Give me 30 minutes. Halden straightened. Ma'am, with respect. Mara cut him off with a look. I can tell you what that is. Cross held her gaze. You do not leave the perimeter. I won't, Mara said. They don't need me to. Outside, morning air stung her nose. A sedan idled across the road, too long. Engine steady, driver still. There. Mara stepped into full view. The sedan rolled forward immediately and stopped about 10 feet from the gate. The window lowered. The man inside was late 30s, clean-cut eyes trained not to wander. He glanced at the operator beside Mara, then back to her. Mara Quinn, he said. That name is retired, Mara replied. His mouth curved faintly. So is Nightjar. The call sign landed like a thumb, pressed into a bruise. You're not CIA, Mara said. I didn't say I was, he replied. Mara stepped closer. Then you're not supposed to know me. And yet he said I do. The operator shifted. The man lifted one hand, palm visible. If I wanted her taken, this wouldn't be a conversation. Mara kept her voice low. Talk. He studied her face for a beat. Cal Mercer, he said. Your survival created a gap, a myth, an unanswered question. I buried that question, Mara said. Yes, Cal replied, but someone dug. Mara watched his eyes, a small flicker inward. Someone from my unit, Mara said. Cal did not deny it. His silence confirmed it. One person never closed the file, Cal said. They want proof, closure. Mara's mouth tightened. You don't get closure. You get ghosts. Cal nodded once. That's why they sent me instead of a team. He kept his eyes on Mara. If you disappear again, they dig harder. If you stay visible, they stop looking. Mara held his gaze. You're asking me to stand still. I'm asking you to live, Cal replied. Footsteps approached behind Mara. Helena Cross stepped into the morning jacket, buttoned eyes already measuring. Cross spoke without raising her voice. Or they get closer. Cal's expression did not change. Only if she lets them. Mara looked between them. Run and become a chase. Stay and become a point on a board. I don't get to choose what people see, Mara said. Only what I do. Cal's faint smile faded into something more honest. Then do something that looks boring, he said. Teach, train, heal. Let the legend die while the woman stays. Cross stopped at the gate line. You are trespassing. Cal nodded once. The window began to rise. He paused. They already know. They just want to know what you do with it. Mara's gaze hardened. We're done. The window closed. The sedan rolled away with the same smooth control it arrived with. Mara watched it disappear into traffic. The morning light felt too clean for the words he left behind. Cross stood beside her. You knew him. No, Mara said. Then he knew you, Cross replied. Halden opened the gate and motioned Mara back inside. In the conference room, Cross closed the map. Clean plates were the point, she said. Clean is a costume. Halden's voice stayed even. No match in our systems. That means he's very good or not ours. Cross studied Mara. What did he say that matters? Mara chose her words. Someone kept a file open, she replied. If I disappear, they dig. If I stay visible, they stop. Cross's mouth tightened. Convenient. It sounded practiced, Mara said, like he'd said it to someone else already. Cross went still for a beat, then spoke quietly. The older channels being awake means someone wants a very specific kind of attention. Mara leaned forward. Someone who knew the language. Cross nodded once. Yes. Halden's eyes shifted to Mara. If you were trying to be dead, you did a good job, he said. The line sounded rougher than he meant it. Mara did not smile. It was not a hobby. Cross let the silence hold, then reached into a folder and slid a thin sheet of paper across the table. Your conditions, she said. Autonomy, veto, no media, your name restricted. Mara read it without touching it at first. Restricted isn't erased, she said. It's narrowed, Cross replied. You get notified when your name is spoken in rooms that matter. Mara lifted her eyes. By whom? Cross nodded toward Halden. By him. Halden met Mara's gaze. If it hits my board, you will know. Cross's eyes dropped briefly to Mara's pocket. You received messages last night, she said. Mara stayed still. Yes. I want to see them, Cross said. Mara's voice stayed flat. No. Halden's posture tightened. Not threatening. Alert. Cross did not raise her voice. Those messages could be inside this building. Mara held her gaze. Then you have a bigger problem than my phone. A small pause. Cross's eyes narrowed, then eased. Hand it to Halden for isolation. Mara shook her head once. I keep it. If someone is talking, I want to hear the tone. Cross studied her like she was weighing risk against stubbornness, then she nodded slightly. Fine, she said. But you tell us if the tone changes. Mara pushed the paper back. And the bar, she said, leave June alone. Leave Eddie alone. Cross held her gaze. We will keep them out of reports. Mara stood. The chair legs made a small sound on tile. Click! Back in her room, she closed the door and reached into her pocket for her phone. 2 new messages waited. Unknown. First, stay visible. Second, we saw the ring. Mara stared at the words until her thumb went cold. She checked the sender. Nothing. No number she could call. Just a blank name that felt like a hand pressed to the other side of glass. She set the phone down beside the half-dog tag. The metal caught the light, dull and stubborn. Mara poured water into the desk cup. The plastic sweated immediately. A circle formed beneath it, darkening the surface in a slow, patient halo. She watched the ring spread and placed her palm flat on the desk as if she could stop it. The wood felt cool under her skin. She held the pressure there steady. Her hand did not shake. Outside the door, a foot shifted once in the hall and then went still again. Mara listened, counted breaths, and let the ring keep forming anyway. Mara opened her canvas bag and pulled out a tourniquet, running her fingers along the strap until it lay flat. She set it beside the cup, beside the widening circle. Then she wrote 2 words on a scrap of paper from the desk drawer and slid it under the keycard. Hands steady, Mara left the scrap of paper under the keycard and stepped out of the room with her canvas bag on her shoulder. The hallway lights were too bright for morning. The operator at the end of the hall nodded and looked past her, not at her. She walked with the same measured pace she used on the training deck. Click, click. The sound carried down the corridor and came back thinner from the walls. Helena Cross waited outside a small briefing office. A folder rested under her arm. Halden stood nearby, hands loose, eyes awake. "You start today," Cross said. Mara looked at the folder. "I start when the room is ready." Cross opened the folder and slid out a badge without a name, just a color band and a number that meant clearance. "It is ready," she said. Mara did not reach for it. "If my name goes on anything, we are done." Cross held her gaze. "It will not." Halden watched Mara's hands. "We pulled the hospital schedule," he said. "They covered your shifts." Mara's mouth tightened. The hospital was a routine, a place where she could hide in plain sight. Losing it felt like a door closing, even if she told herself it was temporary. Cross moved first. "The facility is 15 minutes, she said. "You asked for autonomy. Autonomy needs structure." Mara took the badge and clipped it to her waistband. Plastic against fabric, a small sound. "Structure is fine," she said. "Cages are not." The drive was quiet. Not empty, just controlled. The SUV windows turned the world into a muted film. The shipyard cranes passed like dark ribs against the sky. The scent of salt came and went with gaps in the buildings. When they arrived, the ocean was visible again, pale blue and indifferent. The training complex sat behind fencing and camera poles. Steel walkways connected low buildings. No flags, no signage, just function. A classroom opened onto a deck where wind moved across painted lines. Metal tables waited in rows. Trauma kits were stacked like bricks. A whiteboard stood clean, untouched, almost suspicious. Mara set her bag down and ran her fingers across a tourniquet strap, flattening it. She placed a clear cup on the table, poured water from a bottle, and watched condensation begin. Cross lingered in the doorway. "The first class is mixed," she said. "Medics, operators, summer candidates." Mara nodded once. "Good." Cross hesitated. "They know you as Quinn." Mara did not look up. "They do not need more." Cross left without arguing, and Mara took that as a small victory she did not celebrate. The trainees filed in a few minutes later. Boots on metal, quiet voices, eyes scanning the room. A few looked at Mara's leg and then away fast. Some did not look at all, which meant they were trained or trying to be. Mara waited until the last chair stopped scraping. "Hands," she said. They put their hands on the table, palms down. A dozen different tensions showed up in their fingers. Some curled like fists they were pretending not to make. Mara moved along the row, watching knuckles, wrist angles, breathing. Click, click. A tall man with close-cut hair tried to hold her gaze, testing. Mara did not flinch and did not match the challenge. She looked at his hands instead. "Your grip is wrong," she said. "It's fine," he replied. Mara placed 2 fingers on the back of his wrist and pressed lightly, just enough to show the tendon jump. "It's not fine," she said. "Fine gets people dead." The man swallowed and adjusted without another word. Mara picked up a tourniquet and held it in the air. "This is not bravery," she said. "This is timing. If you wait for permission, you already lost." She demonstrated on a training limb, slow and exact. Tighten, set, lock. The click of the buckle sounded clean, satisfying. "When it gets loud," she said, "your hands stay boring." A woman in the second row, freckles and sharp eyes, raised her hand. "You ever hesitate?" she asked. Mara looked at her for a beat. "Sometimes," she said. "Then I stop. Then I do it anyway." No one laughed. The room took the line like it was a weight. She handed the tourniquet forward. "Name." "Lena Cho," the freckled woman said. "Show me," Mara replied. Lena's hands shook at first. "Not a lot. Enough." Mara watched without correcting until the moment the shake became a habit. "Breathe out," Mara said. Lena exhaled and her fingers steadied. The strap seated. The lock held. Mara nodded once. "Again," she said. The session moved like that. Small corrections, small silences. Mara did not tell stories. She did not need to. She gave them rhythm, and the rhythm did what stories never could. When the class ended, people stood slower than they arrived. A few lingered to repack their kits, not ready to step away from the safety of a clear task. Lena approached last. "Ma'am," she said, "is it true you worked ER?" Mara looked at the tourniquet in her hands. "I work ER," she said. Lena glanced at Mara's leg, and then back to her face, eyes careful. "And before that," Mara met her gaze. "Before that, I learned the same thing," she said. Hands steady. Lena nodded and the question stayed unasked. Mara stayed in the empty room after they left. Wind pushed at the deck railing outside. The cup on her table sweated and formed a dark ring. She left it. Halden appeared at the doorway without knocking, as if he had already decided he belonged anywhere in the building. "They listened," he said. "They always listen," Mara replied. Halden's eyes flicked to the cup. "You keep making circles," he said. Mara did not look up. I keep drinking water. Halden stepped in. Cross wants you in the briefing room later, he said. Mara nodded once. Tell her I will come when I'm done. Halden did not move right away. Your class went well, he said. Mara's mouth tightened. That is not your job to judge. Halden accepted that. He turned to leave, then paused. Your phone, he said. Any more messages? Mara's fingers stayed on the strap. Not yet. Halden watched her for a moment longer, then left without pushing. In the afternoons, the training changed shape. Gloves, fake blood, strobe lights. Recorded gunfire played through speakers at a low volume just enough to make the nervous system lean forward. Mara turned it down every time someone tried to use it as an excuse. She walked the room and corrected breathing posture in the way a person's shoulders betrayed panic. Your hands are not allowed to run, she told them. Your hands are allowed to work. By the end of the first week, the trainees stopped staring at her leg. They started listening to the sound it made when she moved. Click, click. It became a metronome that kept them from spinning out. Mara ate in the same corner of the mess hall every day. Water, no ice. The cup always left a ring. She never wiped it. The messages came less often, which made them worse. One evening, after a long drill that left everyone sweating and silent, her phone buzzed once. Unknown. Still counting. Mara stared at the screen until the letter stopped looking sharp. She set the phone down and ran her thumb over the half-dog tag on her nightstand, tracing grooves like Braille. The next day, another message. Unknown. We like the ocean. Mara did not respond. She carried the phone in her pocket anyway. She wanted the weight of it. She wanted to feel the moment it moved. On a Friday night, June's name appeared on her screen. Not unknown. June, plain and real. Mara answered without greeting. Are you okay? June's voice came through the thin, surrounded by bar noise and a hum of refrigeration. I'm fine, she said. Your friends came back? Mara sat up straighter. Halden's people? June exhaled. Not them. Mara's throat tightened. Say it clean. June lowered her voice. Someone sat at your spot, she said. Ordered water, no ice. Left a ring, then took a pencil and traced it. Mara stared at the wall. White paint. Tiny hairline crack near the ceiling. Her mind built the scene anyway, the careful gesture, the casual cruelty. June continued. They did not ask about you. They did not have to. They just looked around like they were measuring. Mara's fingers curled once and opened. Did Eddie see them? No, June said. He hasn't been back since that night. Mara closed her eyes for half a second. Send me a picture. June hesitated. Mara. Send it, Mara said. A moment later, her phone received an image. The rusty buoy counter, a damp circle on dark wood, pencil lines traced around it neat and deliberate. A small arrow pointed at the ring like it was a target. Mara stared at it until her eyes started to ache. June, she said, voice low. I know, June replied. Do not talk to them, Mara said. June gave a short, humorless laugh. I didn't. I asked if they wanted fries. Mara held the phone tighter. Lock up earlier, she said. Do not walk out alone. June's voice softened. You can't protect everybody. Mara did not answer that. She looked at the traced ring again and felt something old in her chest shift a pressure that wanted motion. After the call, she went to Halden's office. The corridor smelled of floor cleaner and warm electronics. Halden was alone, leaning over a screen with a map. Mara held the phone out. This was last night, she said. Halden took it and studied the picture. His expression tightened. June sent this. Yes. Halden handed it back. We'll put eyes on the bar, he said. Too late, Mara replied. Halden's gaze sharpened. What do you mean, too late? Mara slid the phone into her pocket. They are not watching the bar, she said. They are watching the idea of me. The ring is a signature. Halden took a slow breath. Cross won't like you pulling civilians into this. Mara stared at him. Cross brought this to a bar, she said. Halden flinched slightly, then steadied. I'll talk to her, he said. Mara turned to leave, then stopped. No names, she said. June stays off paper. Eddie stays off paper. Halden nodded once. Agreed. The next week, a new candidate joined the class. He introduced himself as Marcus Vale, smile too, even posture, two correct eyes that did not rest anywhere long enough to be natural. His hands were clean, no calluses, no small cuts, no signs of training wear. Mara noticed all of it before he sat down. She ran the drill anyway. Marcus did everything right. Too right. He wrapped the tourniquet with perfect tension. He locked it with a click that sounded rehearsed. He asked questions that were almost good. Almost. How many seconds do you have before hypovolemic shock becomes irreversible? Marcus asked. Voice calm. Mara answered without hesitation. Depends on the injury and the environment. Marcus nodded as if he already knew. Later during a scenario, Marcus leaned closer while his partner worked a simulated wound. His voice stayed low. Your number? He said, as if it belonged in the lesson. 71. Is that confirmed or estimated? The room seemed to tilt. Mara looked at him, and the air between them went cold and still. "That question is not medicine," she said. Marcus held her gaze. "It is context," he replied. Mara's eyes dropped to his hands. They were steady, but not from discipline, from distance. He did not care who bled. He cared what the numbers meant. Mara stepped closer until he had to look up at her. "Stand," she said. Marcus rose smooth and unbothered. "Leave," Mara said. A few trainees froze with their hands halfway through packing. Lena looked between them, eyes wide. Marcus did not move right away. "Ma'am," he said, still polite, "I was assigned." Mara's voice stayed flat. "Not by me." Marcus's smile thinned. For the first time, something sharp showed underneath. "You can't veto everything," he said. Mara watched the edge in his eyes. Then she looked past him to the doorway where Halden had appeared without sound. Mara did not raise her voice. "Get him out," she said. Halden's expression did not change, but his posture shifted. Two operators moved in behind him, precise and silent. Marcus lifted his hands slightly, as if this was all a misunderstanding he could narrate his way out of. "This isn't necessary," he said. Mara kept her gaze steady. "You came to count," she said. "Not to learn." Halden stepped forward. "Marcus Vale," he said. "Walk with us." Marcus's eyes flicked to Mara one last time. His smile tried to return. It failed. He turned and walked out between the operators, his shoulders stiff. The room stayed quiet long after the door closed. Mara looked at her trainees, at their hands on their kits, at the way their fingers had stopped moving. "Back to work," she said. Her voice did not shake. Her hands did not either. On the table, the plastic cup sat in its ring of water, the dark circle spread wider than before. Mara kept her eyes on it until the urge to wipe it away passed. The circle was a mark, but it was also proof of something simple. Water sweats, wood darkens, patterns repeat. The door opened without a knock. Helena Cross stepped in, jacket buttoned, face unreadable. Halden followed a step behind her, and two operators held position in the hall, like quiet furniture with pulses. Cross looked at the trainees first. A dozen faces turned toward her, then toward Mara, waiting for permission to react. Mara did not give them any. "Pack up," Mara said. No one argued. Kits snapped shut. Straps tightened. Chairs slid back with soft scrapes. Lena Cho paused long enough to meet Mara's eyes. Mara nodded once. They filed out, boots on metal, the room emptying until only the three of them remained. Cross's gaze drifted to the cup, then to Mara's face. "You removed an assigned candidate," she said. "He wasn't a candidate," Mara replied. Halden stayed near the door, posture careful. "We ran the name," he said. "Marcus Vale exists on paper. Contractor badge, limited access. No background we can verify." Cross's jaw flexed once. So someone walked him in. Mara's eyes stayed on the ring. "Or someone let him walk," she said. Cross held her gaze. "You said he came to count." Mara lifted her head. "He asked about the number like it was a statistic on a slide," she said. "Not like a person's life." Cross's expression did not shift. "Where is he?" Halden answered. "Holding room." Cross nodded. "Then we make it a clean room. No phones, no noise." Mara picked up the cup and carried it to the sink. She poured out the water, rinsed it, and set it back on the table. The ring remained dark and sharp. She did not wipe it. They moved through the building with quiet speed. The corridor smelled of floor cleaner and warm electronics. A ventilation grate rattled slightly as air pushed through, steady and indifferent to the tension. The holding room was small and bright. One table, two chairs, a camera dome in the corner. Marcus Vale sat with his hands folded, spine straight, eyes calm. Too calm. He looked like someone who had practiced looking harmless. When Cross entered, he stood. "Brigadier," he said, tone polite, like he was greeting a professor. Cross did not sit. She did not offer her hand. "Sit," she said. Marcus sat smoothly. Halden remained by the door. Mara stayed just inside the threshold, not hiding, not offering him the comfort of distance. Marcus's eyes flicked to her collar, then away as if he had already cataloged the spot. Cross spoke first. "Who authorized your access? Music access." Marcus smiled faintly. "You know how these programs work," he said. "Authorization is a chain. I'm a link." Cross's voice stayed even. "Then name the chain." Marcus's smile thinned. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to prevent it." Mara watched his hands. Clean nails, no scars, no small cuts. A man who had not fought for his own survival, but had studied other people's. "You traced a ring in a bar," Mara said. Marcus turned his head toward her with practiced curiosity. "A ring." Mara's voice stayed flat. "You left a signature." Marcus's eyes narrowed a fraction, and in that fraction the mask slipped. Not fear, interest. Cross noticed it too. "You were at the Rusty Buoy," she said. Marcus did not answer directly. "You're protecting a myth," he said. "A file that should have stayed buried." Cross held his gaze. "That file is none of your business." Marcus leaned back slightly. That depends on who you think owns the file, he said. The room went quiet enough that the ventilation sounded loud. Mara stepped forward one pace. You asked me if my number was confirmed or estimated, she said. What answer were you hoping for? Marcus looked at her as if he admired her control. Truth, he said. Or a lie I could measure. Mara nodded once slow, so you could report it. Marcus's mouth curved. So I could close the loop. Cross's voice sharp and subtle. For whom? Marcus's gaze flicked to the camera dome. He looked away again. For the people who never stopped watching, he said. For the people who do not like loose ends. Mara felt the words press against her ribs. Loose ends. Eddie's voice in the safe room. June's photo of the trace circle. Cross did not blink. You came here under false identity, she said. You attempted Montagman. You attempted provocation. That is hostile. Marcus lifted his hands, slightly palms visible. I didn't touch her, he said. I didn't threaten. I asked questions. You asked the wrong ones, Mara replied. Marcus's eyes held hers. You're training again, he said, and there was something in the line that sounded like satisfaction. You stayed visible. Mara did not react. You wanted me visible, she said. Marcus's smile returned small and controlled. Visibility is a leash, he said. Cross stepped closer. The air changed. Not louder, heavier. You will tell us who sent you, she said. Marcus's smile faded. That's not how it works, he replied. Mara watched the shape of his confidence. It was the confidence of someone who believed the room could not touch him. Paper protection, invisible sponsors, the comfort of distance from consequence. Mara looked at Halden. Get me a pencil, she said. Halden hesitated, then nodded and left the room. He returned quickly with a plain yellow pencil and a notepad. He set them on the table and stepped back. Marcus watched curious. Mara sat down opposite Marcus without asking permission. She placed the notepad between them. Then she set the pencil on top and rolled it once with her fingers, slow, so he could see the graphite glint. You like marks, Mara said. Marcus's eyes stayed on the pencil. I like records. Mara nodded. Then make one. Cross's gaze sharpened. Mara. Mara did not look at her. Patterns matter, Mara said. You told me I'm a signal. Fine. Signals can be read both ways. Marcus's mouth twitched. You think you're going to bait me with a pencil? Mara slid the notepad closer to him. Draw the ring, she said. Marcus stared. What? Mara's voice stayed quiet. Draw the ring you traced in the bar. Marcus's eyes narrowed. He looked up at Cross, then at Halden, then back to Mara. You don't have proof, he said. Mara held his gaze. You don't need proof to make a habit, she replied. Do it. Something shifted behind Marcus's eyes, a small flare of irritation. He did not like being told what to do by a woman in scrubs in any context. His fingers reached for the pencil. Cross moved half a step forward. Don't, she said. Marcus ignored her. He picked up the pencil and placed the tip on the paper. He drew a circle with quick, confident motion. He added a small arrow at the edge, almost without thinking. Mara watched his hand. Not the line, the pressure, the certainty. He set the pencil down. Mara lifted her phone and opened the photo June sent. The traced ring on the bar counter, the same arrow, the same angle. Mara slid the phone across the table. Marcus's eyes flicked down. His face stayed calm, but his throat moved. Cross's voice lowered. That is you, she said. Marcus leaned back. A circle is a circle, he said. Mara's voice stayed flat. Not that arrow, she said. Not that angle. People have signatures. Halden stepped forward. We have prints on the pencil, he said. We have video of you drawing it. We have your access logs. We have your timing. Marcus's lips pressed together. The calm began to crack at the edges. Cross held his gaze. Who sent you? Marcus looked at Mara now, and in his eyes was something close to annoyance and something close to relief. He had been waiting for a confrontation that proved she was still the person in the file. This to him was confirmation. You're trying not to be what they wrote, Marcus said. Mara did not blink. I'm trying to be what I am, she replied. Marcus exhaled through his nose. They kept your name, he said. They kept the blade. They kept the count. They kept the unanswered part. Cross's voice tightened. Name them. Marcus's eyes went to the camera dome again. He hesitated and Mara saw it. Not loyalty. Fear. Halden stepped closer, voice even. If you do not speak, you become the only name we have, he said. You become the loose end. Marcus swallowed. Mara watched his hands. They were starting to sweat, a thin sheen at the knuckles. He wiped them on his pants without realizing he had done it. You're not the only one who knows patterns, Mara said softly. Marcus looked up. Mara leaned in a fraction, just enough that her voice could stay low. That arrow, she said. You drew it again because you couldn't stop yourself. Habit is a leash, too. Marcus's jaw tightened. He glanced across, then at Halden. He realized the room was smaller than he thought. He spoke finally. There's a liaison channel, he said, voice tight. an old one, people who never stopped using it, people who kept keys. Cross did not move. Names. Marcus shook his head once. I don't have names, he said. Not real ones. Handles, cutouts. I was told to confirm you were alive and confirm your posture. You're training, you're stable, you're visible. That's what they wanted to know. Mara felt something cold settle in her chest. Confirm posture. Not medical posture. Behavioral posture. The way she held herself. The way she responded to pressure. Cross's voice stayed steady. So you are a messenger. Marcus's mouth tightened. A censor, he corrected. Mara stood up. The chair legs made a small scrape. Click. Cross looked at her. Where are you going? Mara's eyes stayed on Marcus. Back to class, she said. Cross's gaze narrowed. You are not done here. Mara's voice stayed calm. I'm done letting people make me a performance, she replied. Halden stepped aside to let her pass. In the corridor, Mara's breathing was even. She walked with steady pace, the click of her foot measured on tile. The urge to do violence rose like a reflex, and she let it pass through her without catching. A reflex was not a decision. She returned to the training room and found Lena and the others waiting outside, hands half-packed, eyes uncertain. Word traveled fast in places built to contain it. Mara opened the door and stepped inside. In, she said. They filed back to their seats. Mara placed a cup on the table and poured water. Condensation formed. A ring began again, slow and patient. She picked up a tourniquet. Hands, she said. They put their hands down. The room quieted into work. Mara demonstrated again, slow and exact. Tighten, set, lock. She made the motion boring on purpose. She watched their fingers until the tremor left. Outside, whatever Cross and Halden did with Marcus stayed outside. Mara did not ask. Asking was an old habit, too. That night, her phone did not buzz. The next morning, it did not buzz either. A day passed, then another. Silence settled around the device like dust. Mara kept it on anyway, not out of hope, out of choice. June called on the third evening. Her voice sounded tired but steady. They stopped coming, June said. Mara closed her eyes for a brief second. Good, she replied. And Eddie June added. He came by, sat in the corner, drank water. Mara pictured it without meaning to. Eddie's cane, his steady eyes, a cup on the bar, leaving a ring. June's voice softened. He asked if you were eating. Mara exhaled once quiet. Tell him I'm fine, she said. June made a small sound that could have been a laugh. Sure, she replied, not believing her, but letting it be enough. Mara hung up and stood on the training deck after hours. The ocean was dark now, a flat expanse that swallowed light. Wind pushed against the railings, cold and clean. She held her water cup in both hands and watched condensation bead on the plastic. The ring formed on the metal table beside her, faint at first, then darker. A circle. Not a target, not a signature, just water doing what water did. Mara set the cup down and did not cover the ring. She let it sit in plain view. Her left foot clicked once as she shifted her weight. She listened to the sound and let it belong to the night. Mara touched the tape at her collar, then lowered her hand without peeling it back. The blade beneath stayed where it was ink under skin count, under silence. She breathed in salt air until it filled her lungs. Then she exhaled and felt her shoulders drop a fraction. Behind her, the building lights hummed. Inside, tables waited, tourniquets waited, hands waited to be taught steadiness. Mara stood with the ocean in front of her, and the ring drying at her side, and she stayed where she was. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.